Okay, welcome. I'm Dario Nascimben. I'm doing my master research thesis with TU Eindhoven, and I've been using Flowable for kind of my prototype. The thing that was discussed before was really great. I think the main reason why I use Flowable is actually because it's a powerful engine and it has really kind of low-code barrier, so you can actually build pretty powerful application without kind of coding so much, and already kind of present to eventually stakeholder and get kind of some feedback really easily. The structure of the presentation is this one. I want to go through the problem a little bit. Then I go deeper on why we wanted to build a checklist, and this is related to the flexibility and how I create that using Flowable. I won't go in detail how my checklist engine works because it's part of research that is not published yet. So when it will be published, eventually people can read that. But I will discuss how I play with Flowable, and I will have a small kind of prototype for that. Basically, the problem we had is that we were working with knowledge-intensive tasks. That like basically tasks that the people do, so you cannot really automate them with the kind of machine, but you want to be able to track them. So you want to be able to know that maybe in a specific stage of the process, those tasks has been made. And the thing is also that the models are not mature, so we wanted to start actually running the system even if the model maybe doesn't work so well or doesn't cover all the cases. So the idea is there is, okay, maybe the engine should take care on how to deal when you have kind of situation where they are not represented in the model and you don't even have a model in the system. Like before we saw how we can insert action, but we were always talking about models that were inserted in the system. Now I'm thinking, when if you don't have a model in the system and you want actually the user that manage the deviation. And since also we are talking about the user, our goal was not really about compliance, so not really have a strict process and make people follow that, but rather support the user to the tasks that they should do. But the user can decide, okay, I won't do those tasks, I will do other ones, and eventually deviate. Why checklist? Also, we wanted to take something that the user could understand. So if I show kind of one of my stakeholders and I show CMMN, BPMN model, maybe I have to explain a bit how does it work. And while when you have a checklist, usually people are pretty much familiar with that. And still we wanted to have a system that kind of audit the case. So we want to have a flexibility, but also we want to understand when we have deviation, when people add or kind of remove tasks. So yeah, that's basically why. We want a system that is process aware, be able to record when the process deviates, or the case in this case. We want to support the user, not really force them on a specific compliance. And we want to also track the progress of the system real time. Even if the process changed, I want to know what is going to happen. And this is like the tracking is this kind of a real challenge because you have maybe a real process that keeps changing, and you have the software embedded one that is the one that is run on Flowable. And if the real process changed, then how you are able to track it? Like it's a tricky thing. You need to change also the software embedded one. So yeah, the plan. My idea was, okay, let's build a system that is highly flexible, maybe not as complicated. A checklist is a pretty simple stuff. Get the feedback from the user and then understand actually if the flexibility we put there was making sense or not. So eventually, the goal of the research is eventually to have a system that is not as flexible as the first prototypes, but a bit restricted depending on what flexibility makes sense or not. But let's dive into what is flexibility. So we There are some papers around, and this is the one I found most interesting, where we actually categorize the flexibility in different kind of type. So we have by design, actually, I think this is wrong, and was actually in the paper, interesting. So flexibility by design, by deviation, under specification, and by change. And let's go deeper, what does it mean, all of those. Flexibility by design, it means that you allow, by design, so in your model, you allow stuff to run flexible. So in this case, we have a BPMN model when you have 2 tasks that can run in parallel, or actually they can also run both or only once of those. We have this inclusive task. And this is a flexibility of design. And the same way of CMMN, you have a case with 2 tasks. And in CMMN, you have flexibility by default, in a sense. In CMMN, you have to restrict. So you start with flexibility, and you eventually restrict your flow. While on BPMN, you have a strict flow, and then eventually you have to express the flexibility that you want to have. But basically, flexibility by design can be implemented in different way. You can have parallel tasks. You can have a choice. You can have iterations, so tasks that run multiple times. This is as a sample flexibility by design. And you can have also multi-instances. Flexibility by deviation. So as you understand first, like flexibility by design is something that you design in the model. It's something that doesn't really, is not really connected on the engine you run. Of course, the engine should be able to support those flexible models. Flexibility by deviation is actually something that the engine should support. So it's the ability to actually maybe undo, skip, redo a specific task, or eventually split the model. Not split the model, split the execution. And this is something that need to be supported by the engine. Flexibility by change, that's actually something linked to the previous presentation when you have, when you want to change the model. And you want to eventually migrate, or that the new instance start with the new model and the previous one go with the previous one. That's something that Flowable supports pretty well. Maybe on CMMN, the migration is not fully supported, but on BPMN is pretty much mature. And flexibility by under specification, this basically go through both runtime and modeling. So it means that you maybe have a task that is not specified. So you know already by design time that at the specific step, you need to add something. And what you add will be actually defined on runtime. So ideally, you model that, and then when you run the runtime, the engine will say, okay, this task is not specified, what do you want to do? So if we need to kind of visualize those in this kind of graph, we have on the left side design time and runtime, and all those sections that kind of belong to kind of different places. And in general, how we design that is that we take a chance to use the flexibility by design that the models we had, and also, I would say also the forms. So we use Flowable to design our flexibility. In a sense, the checklist engine run on Flowable, so we kind of design it. It's like we make a program out of that. It's like when you model something, it's like you're building software really, really high level. And then this model, the checklist engine, have eventually this kind of flexibility during runtime. So yeah, if I go briefly there, then we actually can check out how does it work. We have the real process. We have BPMN model, and the BPMN model actually support kind of the checklist engine. And I would say let's go and see if we can actually kind of duplicate my screen. Anyway, any question? Meanwhile, no? Okay. Does it work? Yes. So okay, the interface you're familiar from the previous presentation. Okay, now we can kind of run our checklist. This is the only model in the system. What first asks me the system is, okay, what is your checklist model? And this is something really simple. My idea of the prototype was actually to show to people and not really making something production ready or whatever. But it is pretty straightforward, even if the system doesn't look so well. So basically, we have 4 columns, and those 4 columns are basically our stages in the process. And every stages have kind of maximum of 4 kind of checks. Check 1, check 2, check 3 could be also implemented on an array, but I did it like that. And everything of that is basically inside an object. Like every stage, the ability, the good stuff of Flowable is that you are able to kind of, in the form, to get a bunch of variables and put them on a specific object. I would say JSON object. So we can, this is our model, this is already preset, we can actually implement it. And what I have, if I kind of go to control, instances, my checklist here, I have my variables and I have my all stages 1, 2, 3, and they're all kind of this object here that are kind of that they have basically the information at specific stage and what is actually the status of that specific stage. So we have if the check is enabled, what is the name, and if it's true or false, if it has been done or not. And the checks are really a simple stuff because they can be really done or undone. You cannot really have many different states on that. So basically, let's try to think about customer service operation. And I try to make it something weird. I cannot really talk about the project I'm currently running with the checklist. But the thing that made me fun is that I was hearing an interview with the founder of Airbnb a couple of days ago. And he was discussing that once they had a call at the customer support service that basically the user that ran the house, they call and they say, oh, there is a ghost in the house and we want to leave. And the policy there is that they have to call the owner of the house and they have to understand if there is really the thing that the guests are saying that. So they call up the owner of the house and they ask them, oh, is there a ghost in your house? Because that was the policy of the processes. And the owner of the house say, yes, there is a ghost. His name is Steve, and he's really friendly. And is actually listed, is written on the listing that there is a ghost. And yeah, so basically, in a sense, it was in the listing. So I mean, people cannot really get the refund if it's part of the stuff. So they call back the user there. They were renting the place, and they say, oh. Yeah, I mean, but it was written in the listing that there was a ghost, so, I mean, you were aware, were you aware of that? Did you read that? And they say, yeah, yes, we were aware of that, but it's too creepy and we want to leave anyway. So in that case, at the end, they decide to refund the guest at the expense of Airbnb. But of course, this is how the process I'm dealing with. Like, I'm not creating a process for handling a ghost in a customer service. It's something that happens only once, and eventually you have to change the process just for that instance and then kind of forget about that. So let's think that we are kind of the customer service that we receive this kind of request, and we have to verify which is the customer, the name, the location. Of course, how the checklist system works now, I can actually go in the process, but like if I have to complete that to go to the next stage. So if I complete, now actually this was meant to be there. something that they didn't show, and I think is great to see. Okay, you run your testing, doesn't work. Okay, maybe there is a problem in the process. Let's go on another process, that is that one, that has a loop, and I can actually see, where is it? The iTerm, and I see that there is an error. Well, anyway, there is an error in the script, line 1. And I can simply, that's something I love about Flowable work, that you can simply correct the stuff, save it, deploy, and you're good to go to start a new one. So it was really fast when I was actually working on that. So now it should work. So when I put verify booking number, complete, it's still on verify booking number. Actually, the system actually calculated my progress. And this progress can vary depending on how many tasks I have in the system. In this case, maybe when I have the booking number, I don't need to verify the location. So I can say this is actually not relevant for me anymore. And the system actually changed the model. And when I submit it, basically, it changed the model and also the task that I've done. So basically, now the progress is 0.5%. So if the manager of the customer service and understand what happened in the different cases, I know that this case is the stage 1, and the progress of stage 1 is 0.5. Okay, then in this case, we can verify the name, and we can proceed on that. So when the system understands, so we have what we have here in my checklist is basically a really simple process where we have the checklist form that we see, and we have some script that are actually the engine of our checklist, and we have a user task that keep looping, and this script basically is changing the variable that then get displayed on the form. So it changed the variable of what are the stage we are now and what are the tasks that we need to deal with. So get the problem in the second step is ask about the problem and update the case, and maybe I understand there is a ghost, and in the next stage when I contact the owner, I want to change my model, and I want to put there ask about the ghost. So again, the model was not meant to solve a ghosting problem, but I can eventually edit it in runtime. I do complete, and then maybe the person that handled the next one, he has actually the new task that they have to ask the owner about the ghost. And he can basically proceed on that and eventually complete the process. So as you say, basically, in this case, I mean, this will allow a lot of flexibility, and in the checklist engine that I'm actually running, there are ability to do more deviation and changing more. This is actually flexibility by change, so changing the model during runtime, and allow me also to edit the tasks that are there. So it actually allow you to scope pretty big. The thing is that when you're also looking, and somebody can say, oh, that's really bad. Like now here, everybody can do everything they want. The thing is that the system log everything. So if you are actually deleting tasks that you're not supposed to do, then you're liable for that, because the system basically registers that. And moreover, if those deviations happen often, I can take my log, use process mining, and then I understand that actually my process is not so good because it's not so mature. So in the new version of the model, I can add the tasks that I see that many people add every time. And this basically the idea. And still, I can have a system that actually can run in production if we have a system where you don't have to force so much compliance. It's more about tracking what's happening, and even if you don't have a kind of a model that is kind of so mature. Going back to the presentation, yeah, basically what people could say, oh, why having that? Okay, interesting. Maybe because I have the settings open. Yes. What did you see? It was always there? No, I hope not. Okay, good. So the old way is that, okay, you say, oh, you could also model that with a CMMN, and I love CMMN. Actually, it's the one that has inspired me to do this checklist engine, because you have stages, you have tasks there, and then you have basically a sentry that basically check if you can proceed on the next stage. But you cannot really, when you have a model there, you cannot really add and remove tasks so easily. You have always to create a new task, then eventually do migration. It's an hassle. And BPMN is kind of even worse, I would say. But I mean, they can represent a checklist engine. Of course, you have to create your own interface for that to kind of support that. But with Flowable form, it's kind of pretty easily. So we basically have those stages with those objects that have these checks, and kind of they proceed on that. And benefit of Flowable work is that create business application really fast and allow really rapid development with low code. I like the debugging capability, especially in the work part. You can check where is the model, what happened there. And it has the best support for CMMN of all the engines I tried. So if you're going to CMMN, for me, it's not brainer to not choose Flowable. And then it has REST API that also was part of our system, that we want to have dashboard that can see what is the progress of the specific stage in the specific kind of cases. Yeah, basically, that's it.